Greetings, I'm Crazy Uncle Fleak. This is my Vizsla Rogers. This is my wiener dog Johnsonville. And even though the other video I shot, I said that it was our first video, this is actually going to be our second video shot, but it will be the first video that I release. I wasn't thinking that that other video, which is how to bike with your Vizsla, was going to be a multi-part video. So I decided to do this video and we'll release it first. I also wanted to take a couple of seconds to explain kind of my idea behind this how-to series and introduce myself as well. So thought no better way to do that than to go through the title, Crazy Uncle Fleak. So let's start with Fleak. Yes, that actually is my name. I know that that recently has become a slang term. It's always been my name. It's not related to the recent on Fleak slang phrase. It is actually my real last name, and when you have a pretty normal first name like Dan and a pretty unique last name like Fleak, you grow up with everyone calling you Fleak. So me and all of my brothers have always been called by our last names. So that's the Fleak part. Uncle, I am not married, have never been married, I don't have any kids, but I have lots of friends with kids. I do have a niece and a nephew as well. And I actually took care of my mother for 12 years when she became disabled. She died a couple of years ago, and so I just never got married and never had kids. So after my mom passed away, I decided to take a couple of years to travel around and see all my friends and family that I hadn't seen in a long time, and got to meet a lot of their kids. And it started me thinking that since I'm 45, probably not going to have kids at this point, I have a lot of knowledge that I am not going to pass on to anyone. Could pass them on to my nieces and nephews or my friends' kids that I get to know, but I decided, why don't I make a YouTube video series where I pass on all my dumb little bits of information that I've learned in my life that I normally would pass on to children, and I'm now going to share it with all of you in the great wide world. So that's the uncle part. And crazy, well, I am Crazy Uncle Fleak, so I got my haircut covered up, although that's not all that crazy anymore. So anyway, today our video is on how to use a hydration backpack to water your dog while you're out exercising. One of the most frustrating things I've found about exercising with my dog is not the fact that I have to water the dog, but carrying something that allowed me to water the dog. Now, dogs typically like to drink out of bowls. And so you're always carrying around a bowl. Maybe it's one of the collapsible versions, and you have it clipped onto your backpack or you're clipped onto your belt. It's always flapping around. I always forget to bring it a lot of times. And so I actually decided that I was going to try to use a hydration backpack for myself when I was considering running a marathon a few years ago. It was more than a few years ago, it was 4 years ago, when Rogers was a puppy, and I just kind of stumbled onto this way of watering a dog using the hydration backpack, and you don't need a bowl for it. It's pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward, but it's a little piece of information that I've had people mention to me when they see me doing it. Wow, that's really cool. How did you figure that out? And actually, I just kind of stumbled across it. So we're going to take a look at the equipment real quick, and then we're going to jump outside and I'll show you how it works. All right, the equipment you need for this episode is pretty straightforward. It's just a hydration backpack of some kind. This is the Quest brand. I believe this is Dick's Sporting Goods house brand. I took a look at the Camelback version. It was way more expensive, but also much slimmer. And I actually carry 2 bladders. I carry one for the dog and one for me. Don't necessarily have to have 2. I do end up sticking the nozzle into the dog's mouth, so I just think it's a little bit more hygienic to have 2 separate bladders. Actually, you don't even actually need the hydration backpack. You can have just a bladder. I used to carry a bladder in an old soccer backpack, and that worked just fine. But I find this is a little bit more convenient. So, got this bladder. This one, just fill up. It's for the dog. Tried being accurate and found that using a funnel is just easier. If you have these wide mouth bladders, don't fill it all the way to the top, because it's actually kind of hard to get these big wide mouth things on. You can see I got water dumped all over the place, but I think it's all the way on. Sometimes it's on kind of cockeyed. Get that nice and tightened down. And then I already filled my bladder. I have a secondary bladder that I carry. For me. On a side note, I also put a little water in this bladder and then freeze it overnight so that it stays nice and cool. It's not cool not hot right now in Minnesota. It's starting to get into fall, but I do like nice cold water. Just a little bonus bit of knowledge. And there we go. We're ready to go, and we'll head outside and I'll show you how I use it with the dog. So there were a couple of things that occurred to me while we were getting ready to make this video. The first is that not all breeds take to this right away. So actually, vizslas, obviously, I've noticed quite a few videos online of other vizslas drinking out of watering cans or hoses. They just kind of naturally will drink from a running water source. The other breed that I have noticed take to it pretty quickly are huskies for whatever reason. So other pointers, I'm not sure. I haven't really tried it with, but many other dogs are quite taken aback by water coming out of a hose or some other kind of receptacle. So it got me thinking about how I actually stumbled across this, and it's kind of a stair step to get to using the backpack, and that is that we started out using a squirt bottle. So you could have an actual like sports squirt bottle, but this is just one I got from the convenience store that happens to have a squirt bottle top. So how I actually started watering him originally was I took the squirt bottle top and I just lifted up his jowl so that it exposed the side of his mouth, and then would just put that right in there, and I don't even really squeeze it. I just kind of gently massage it a little bit. Essentially, I'm just kind of going doot, 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 doot. Not really like squirting water in there, so just kind of like that. Okay, that was how we originally started using that, and that system actually works just fine. I ended up now starting to use the backpack, so I'll show you how that works. So when you're standing and you're using, this is my nozzle, you actually have to use suction, right? But if you're standing up and you bend down, now it's siphoning. So as long as the end of your hose is below the water source in your backpack, you can see it actually knows what's coming. And I do exactly the same thing. I just gently put it inside his jowl, and then I squeeze it. And there we go. And once I've got it in there, I actually do then take away my hand. And then you just kind of have to get to read the dog. See, kind of pulled back there a little bit, and that's when I take it out. Otherwise, what happens is he'll eventually get to the point where he needs to take a breath, and he'll go and spray water all over you. So just keep an eye on the dog and notice when they are done drinking. So start with smaller drinks, and then you can extend as you go forward. But that's pretty much it. As I mentioned, not too complicated, but it's something that a number of people have commented to me when they see me doing it, that it was something unique and that they hadn't seen before. So I thought I'd share it with everyone. He's not puffing and puffing back there. They will also do that because it's a little bit different than lapping up water. I think after they drink that way, you might hear them going hur, hur, but I think that's just a little bit of water that might have gotten, you know, down the wrong tube. So nothing to be too concerned about. He does it pretty much every time he drinks that way. At first I thought it might be something that was hurting him, but I don't think so. So with that, we'll wrap up this episode and say thanks so much, and tune in for other Crazy Uncle Fleak how-to videos in the future.